we streaming? Oh, wait, I saw my screen. Oh, I have to go to an advertisement. Hello. Hello, hello. How are we doing tonight? Or this morning, or wherever we are. I think I need to refresh my chat room. Hold on, guys. I'm not seeing anything. Okay, there we go. Hi, guys. It says I'm offline. Can you see me? My thing says I'm offline. Am I offline? Can you hear the words that I'm saying? Anyone? Hello, can you guys hear me? Okay, good. Sorry, my Twitch says that I'm offline, so I'm not sure. I'm not getting like how many people are in the room information in that. Okay, well, whatever. I'll fly blind. Are you serious or you're messing with me, man? Sorry, I've had a long. I flew back from. Okay. I flew back from the summit this morning. We had to be at the airport at like 4, so we went to see the midnight showing of Blade Runner at the Cinerama Dome. So see, I'm slow right now. It's dangerous to mess with me right now because I'm a mess. I don't know how many of you actually got to go to the summit, but it's always a spectacular thing. I always learn something new. It's very exciting. Hello. Um, yeah, so it was fascinating. Sorry, you're going to have to work with me tonight because I am just a disaster. I slept, but yeah, my brain is sort of in a different place at the moment. My throat's a little scratchy from talking all weekend. So yeah, rough. But there were some really fantastic presenters, and it's always interesting, like things that you knew a few years ago, and then like you got on the beta team and you're trying all kinds of new things, and in the beta you discovered something that was sort of doing the same thing, and you start to try to work through it, and then you forget what you were doing, like the smart transpose tools. It was so funny. I'm like, oh my god, I used them for years, and then I kept trying to get my transpose mask to work, and it never did. And I was just like, wow. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. So everyone's been on this big kick. Hello, Kyle. Everyone's been on this big kick about anti transpose tool because of the gizmo. And I have to say, I love the gizmo, don't get me wrong, and I actually love the primitives that the gizmo produces. It's a fabulous tool. But let us not forget our old trusty friend, the transpose tool. And especially now that I remember that they're, well, I can't say that I remembered. Now that people have reminded me, we have the smart transpose tool, which was something I forgot. Yay, Summit. Yeah, it's funny because for some reason people just have a hard time wrapping their head around the transpose tool, and I think it's people who like have never physically sculpted, maybe because when you're physically sculpting, you pick up a caliper and you lay down and you measure things. It's this tool you use that's calibrated and it functions. And I've always just used the transpose tool, sort of thinking of it as I always said a ruler, and Tony's like, it's a tape measure, it's yellow. But because one of the primary uses that we use it for is no red wax, use Ma Dirty Blue. I'll talk about that in a second, actually. Uh, but the gizmo's fantastic. Don't get me wrong, and actually, it's invaluable. But I hear a lot of people talk poorly about the transpose tool or say they don't understand the transpose tool, and I want to cut. Oh, what did I just do? Frame. Oh, I made it black. There's a button over there that I touch and things disappear, and I'm like, I don't understand. Um, but don't fear the transpose tool. It's yeah, I don't know. Some people just, I mean, I hear more negativity about the transpose tool, and I'm just like, okay, well, first of all, you've probably never discovered that it has alt. It's the most common. That's true. That's very true. But there are a couple things. So there's the smart transpose tool, and I literally forgot that there was a smart transpose tool. And the one thing that the smart transpose tool does, and Joseph demoed it, but I think that it's worth just saying again, is that if you hold down the control key, I know that everyone might know that. Oh, hold on. Let's give this some turn smooth off. Let's divide this a couple times. Um, you know that the SMT is a smooth modifier. So if you want to keep, I know a lot of people, hold on, let's go back. Boop, 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 boop. You know, like if you, I think smooth's the default on. And if you divide, see how it gets all soft? Well, you don't have to edge loop things to retain their sharp edges. Um, you just turn the SMT off, and I have it all on my menu. It's back up in geometry. So when you are dividing, yeah, here, smooth in the SUV, turn smooth off, and then you can divide. And the benefit of doing it this way, I know everyone loves edge loops, and I can see if you're doing creatures or models and things like that, um, there is a reason to um, to use edge loops. But the problem with edge looping in how I use ZBrush is that I like to have a lot of subdivisions, and I like to be able to go up and down between my subdivisions. That allows us to do all kinds of things. The more subdivision levels you can have, you actually have a great expanse of features and tools and just kind of nifty little tricks that work if you go all the way down in your subdivision levels, smooth, change, and then come back up. Um, well, that's why you just push Y and you get to use both of them, because you know they're just, it's not a if or then, it's just a changing your tool a little. So the one thing I did want to just show again, because once again I used it for years and then I forgot. It didn't work on me, and then I just moved on, because normally I'm in a workflow situation where I need to get things done, and if something's not working, I find a different way to do it quickly and just move on. I'm not out there trying to fix it. And that in turn gets me into situations where I'm a big dummy and I forget things like, oh, a smart transpose tool. So let's go to our transpose tool real quick. This is normal transpose. And you hold down control and you can pull, and you can mask, right? And it's really, oh, well, you pull it and it depends on where you, sorry, undo. It depends on where you start, how it pulls out. And well, the smart transpose tool is really rad because it sort of identifies edges. So like we're here and we can pull it out and just get certain areas. See how it's just going to the edge? And then if you hold down shift, you can add to it. And you can see that it's stopping. We have very low geometry here, so that's why it's so obvious. But you can see how this can be used really quickly to like just grab a handful of faces, and you can really control your smooth or your masking that way. And that is, I don't know if you all understand how exciting that is, but that really is an absolutely spectacular tool. And let's divide up a little bit more. You can see how it's just hitting that edge. And I know, well, I assume, you know, how many times have all of us sat here and done this, and we're like, oh, it's bleeding to the black, so you put backface masking on, and now you come back on this side, and you're like, ah, we'll clean that up. But your brush was too fat, and it still went through, and you're like, yeah, we're trying to, we can mask it in, you know. Forget that. The Smart Transpose Tool is rad. And I lost it. There it is. So, you know, you just come in, boop, hold down shift, boop, 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 boop. So, awesome. And I don't know, you know, the nice thing about this is here, where I was going to show you some acorny stuff, but you know, this has features on it. And so we come in here, and where's Transpose Tool? Smart Transpose. You know, you can come in here, and you just, you know, you can see how you can build it up, right? And so it's a way to really control how you mask things. And like if you want it back up in there, just hold shift and kind of pull, and it'll change. So you can see how that's really an excellent, excellent tool. And so I just wanted to reiterate that. And I'm just going to go over this real quick too, because a lot of people don't remember that there are alt features. And so this is the other awesome, I really find the alt features of the Transpose tool are, you know, a lot of people are like, well, you know, we don't have a bend tool. Well, now we really do have a bend tool, but it still, you know, let's say you just wanted to bend this tip. W, we bring our Y over here, we go like this. Excuse me. We come down here, we go to rotate, hold down the Alt key, and then you will get rotate. You will then get sort of this, you know, it rotates on the joint, and we're not getting any squish on that. The other thing is you're going here to here. When you're holding down Alt, the joints, you have to think of Alt as a tool that has two anchor ends, and then it affects off those, right? So this is the anchor point, this is an anchor point, and this is our active point. And as we hold down Alt and rotate the twist, you'll see that it's not moving this one, not moving this one, but it's twisting in the center, right? And so that's obviously really, I don't think so. I think it depends on geometry, how it runs into geometric changes. And there's a geometry trigger in there, if I'm not mistaken. And so now you can see that, let's say you just want this to twist. You just bring it out here, hold down Alt, and you see now it's twisting from the center, right? So it's leaving this point. And so like for posing and moving your characters around, or your ring around, or objects on parts, you know, it becomes a really powerful way of dealing with that. Oh, I was going to show you. Like 20 minutes ago, I actually had a demo, and I ran through it to show you now. This is what sucks with having a bad brain. We'll figure that one out. So, you know, this works with move as well as rotate and scale, right? So let's go back, go here, zoop, zoop, and move, right? There, it's just moving. Hold down Alt, and you see how you have your two anchor points, and then it's moving in between the anchor points. And so the Alt is a really powerful tool. So once again, we're holding down Alt, and now as I move this, you notice that it's moving from the center dot, right? You see how it's sort of pulling, and then those stretch up to it, but the real activity starts at that center point. So let's say, you know, you can come out here, you can do this, and you're like, oh, well, I really just want to pull this tip up and around to fit something. Well, now you do. I'm holding Alt, but you see how it's a really nice gentle curve where if we're just using move acts completely differently, right? And so the same thing with scale. And this is a nice way of fitting stuff up and end things. Once again, it'll start where your dot is. And then as we hold down dot, see, it's a nice way of tapering. And what's nice about these too is that, you know, it doesn't, you can get this out here, and you see it's just going to scale off of a 90 degree of wherever that pass is, and then it's going to smooth. So if you think about the Alt features with the transpose, right? So if we're here and we hold down Alt, are we on move? Hold down, get over our dot, hold down Alt. It's like a bend, right? So that's an easy way to start getting things to sort of fit in with where you want them, right? You can see how you can manipulate an object and just get it in there. So it's I think the transpose tool is a much maligned and not very loved tool, I think, because all I hear people's like, oh, I'm so glad Gizmo's here because now I never have to look at the transpose tool again. Don't say it. The transpose tool is your friend. Don't be scared of it. And it's your ruler. You know, I assume, and I'm going to go over it again, so if everyone does know this and they hate me because I keep saying it, well, sorry. So your transpose tool is also your ruler. And so when you're making jewelry, scale is obviously a hugely important issue. And I cannot tell you how many people who use Matrix or Rhino or any of the other CAD programs are like, oh, but there's no measurement in ZBrush. And I think we're all coming to grips with the fact that there's actually mind-numbingly accurate measuring in ZBrush. First of all, these little units up here are millimeters. It's the internal scale of the program. And you know, over here you're going to 4 points off a mil. You know, that what is that, a 10,000th of a mil? I mean, come on, give me a break. If that's not accurate enough for you, then please. And then the other thing is now that they've changed how the update size ratios work. Here, let's do this. Duplicate. And we're going to go... We're just going to scale you up, and then we're going to go duplicate, and we'll scale you up. Okay, so we have these few objects, right? And it used to be, if you updated size ratio, it was kind of tricky because if you weren't paying attention, you had other things in your model. Let's say you had the ring base in your model or the mandrel, so it was like 170 millimeters this way, and you know that you have this thing and it's hidden, and you're like, oh, well, it's my ring's 20 mil by 20 mil by 5 mil. And then you hit this and it's, you know, 20 mil by 20 mil by 180 mil. And you get confused because it would take everything that was in the subtool, even if it was hidden, into account. Well, now we don't have that. So now we go here, update size ratio. And that is your bounding box. Everyone says, oh, well, we don't have bounding boxes. Well, yeah, you do. There it is. That is your bounding box. It just assumes that you're smart enough to know that you don't need a little box drawn around it. And there, that's what your bounding box measurements are. And then you go to this measurement, and you go update size ratio, and look, there's your measurement. That is your bounding box. And then we come down here, we accept, come down here, update size ratio, and looky there, we have 2017 by 5. And so it's incredibly accurate measurements. And I want everyone to kind of get that into their head. ZBrush has incredibly accurate measuring tools. They're just not CAD tools. Like if you're sculpting and you have a ruler and you hold it up to your object, you can't then in turn type 27 into your ruler and make your object change, right? So, I know, that's why we're going over it. And so, um, this is really important for everyone who is making objects to understand. Now, the other quickie thing, and I know this is sort of out of the blue, but it's just while we're thinking about measurements and this concept of each subtool having its own bounding box measurement. If you're to um, exporting to preform or to STLs at all, you'll see export to STL, send to preform. And you have to tell it what scale it is, right? So before you export out, you update your size ratio. And that way everybody knows that this tool is this size. Excuse me. But now let's say you're talking to someone, you're this and that, and then you showed someone, no, but I wanted to show them this one, and now you're like, okay, and so you're showing them the changes on this tool, and everyone's happy with it. And then you go export to STL. Can anyone tell me what the issue was with what I just showed you? Any guesses? I changed subtools, but I did not update size ratio for that subtool. So when it sends this out to the printer or exporting it as an STL, it is assuming this subtool that I have selected is this measurement. And we know it's not, right? Update size ratio. See, it's 2017 by 5, not 2 by 1.7 by 499. Right, wow, that was a pretty good just scale, wasn't it? I almost slid that one straight decimal. That's funny. Wow, that was real close. Madness. But Dan Brown would say there's a conspiracy. But does everyone see what I'm saying about this? This will now export the wrong size because we have not updated it. And on stars, it's a little confusing, but let's say I have all these, right? And I want to export this stuff, and I'm like, okay, update size ratio. And so I've done that, and then of course, none of these are to a useful scale. And we'll talk about that in just one second. So I've done that, and I know that's what I'm exporting as. And then the client or the art director comes by, and they're like, oh, well, what about that alternative base? And I'm like, okay, well, here's the alternative base. And then everyone's happy, and I go, boop, and send to export. Well, it's going to assume, right, that this measurement was for this what subtool I have selected, and in turn you're going to export with the wrong scale. So often when you get the oh God, everything exported wrong. ZBrush doesn't know how to export. Run, Will Robinson. Well, that's because we made a mistake. In the Scale Master. Meant to address in the Scale Master plugin. Yeah, probably. But at the end of the day, I don't tend to use it because I like to deal with each part, because as I export things, it gives me a lot more control over each part. I tend to find Scale Master does. I was using other things, other tools, right? And yes, and like see new bounding box for subtool and all that. All of these are literally just a user-friendly interface for this box right here. Joseph just did a really nice job of making it where no, see, set scene scale actually allows you to go, okay, you're setting the scale to the object. Let's say I know this is 10 mil, and you kind of go, oh, transpose. I'm like, where's my ruler? You kind of go like this, and you're like, okay, well, I know that because all of these are old. These were sculpted long before this was here. So these are to a wacky scale, and yeah, these yeah, these are not to scale. So instead of changing your model size, you can change the scene size or the scene scale. But I don't like doing that because I forget I did it, and yeah, and then this isn't 1.9 units, it's really 3.782 units, and so I tend to stick with the foundation. So someone was like, I didn't realize that the transpose tool was a ruler. The one thing you do need to do, and I don't know if they've changed this where this is the base setting or not anymore, because I haven't not used my custom user interface in a long time. But if you go into transpose, if you go into transpose units, right? Unit scale is 1, right? So 1 unit, 1. And then minor ticks is 10. And then major ticks is 1. So that way, this is 1 unit and it has 10 subdivisions. So that way, I know that my big ticks are a millimeter, and then these are tenths of millimeters. And I don't care what anyone on this planet says. If you need to get more accurate than like 1/10 of a millimeter, you're not casting, because you can have 2 to 8% shrinkage rates, and I mean it's a hit or miss situation with casting. No one likes me to say that, but it's very true. Because you have all these CAD heads who are like, oh, no, it needs to be like 3 millionths of a millimeter to do it. Give me a break. It's metal. You're going to slag it together anyway. These are not machined parts for the most part. So I always update size to STL, but could it be useful? Oh yeah, no. It could be useful for very many things. I'm just saying how I use the machine. I have yet to really dig into Scale Master, because it's easy to get yourself into a situation where you have changed the scale of the scene and not just the part. And I would rather, it makes it much easier, right? And like, he has the bounding box here, and that, well, I know that if I just hit this, that's my bounding box. I don't need to know new bounding. Do you see what I'm saying? So yes, you have the verbiage here that you then can learn from, and also export unit scale. So this is where, if you know that you are having a consistent 3% shrinkage and stuff like that, you can do it right here. Because of our software, I just do it after the fact, because that way I know that everything coming out of ZBrush is 100%, not 103% or not 102.2%. And most professional jewelry facilities will take that stuff into consideration. They know their shrinkage rates and stuff, so they know if you want a size 7 and you send them a model that's a size 7, they know their shrinkage rates, and in turn they're usually going to be the one that does that. And especially if you don't tell them that you're adjusting your models for shrinkage rates and stuff like that, you're going to wind up with all kinds of squirrely stuff. Most people who are just taking random people's models understand that they know. So yeah, no, without a question. It's funny, you got to make sure that your decimal places are in the right place, though, because like with Modo, its base decimal system was 1 decimal off from Modo, or from ZBrushes. So I had to work in meters in Modo, and they were millimeters in ZBrush. So do a couple tests to make sure what you're going back and forth between the two programs. And also here, up here, right, update size ratio, if you'll notice right here, you can choose, see this is 1.99 millimeters, or it's 1.99 inches, or it's 52.44 millimeters. Like, why are those so different? That's bizarre. Okay, but like you can choose which one you're doing. So like this, you can go to inches, and now it will read in inches. It'll give you inch stuff. So, you're choosing where the decimal point is here, right? So yeah. Uh, and you can in turn, if you if you're always working in centimeters as opposed to millimeters, you can always come back in here, and instead of units being major ticks being uh, major tick being 1, you can take major tick being 10, and now each big tick is 10 um, little ticks. Thus, in turn, you have centimeters at your big tick. So you can determine how your ruler breaks up. Okay, so we went through that. And so the other thing to think about when you're doing this is like, wall thicknesses and stuff. Just come in. And it really is this easy. I mean, a lot of people who I work with, well, let's say everybody I work with in the jewelry industry uses Matrix or one of the programs that rides off Rhino for the most part. There are a few who are using some very bizarro polymetric modeling programs, which are pretty cool, but and I understand, but yeah, not me. So the easiest way to measure wall thickness is if you just hide it, and you just grab a surface. We know that the Transpose tool sort of it doesn't want to see I'm out here. It's not going to start out here. So we just come over here and we're like, okay, I want to know how far it is from here to here, and you just come over here because often you're tapping points you don't want to, and you just kind of work around. Or you can make sure you don't have a bunch of other stuff behind you and just drag it there. And you just move this around. You're like, okay, well, it's actually a little bit longer. And see the green ticks in there, right? So you can zoom in here. See how at the center of that circle there, you see the green line? Well, that's where it ends. And you just drag it from there. You just make sure you're where you want to be up here. If you're not, just grab your yellow circle and drag it up to the surface. And now that is 0.1707 of a millimeter thick. And really, that's how I measure things. Because, I mean, this is a perfectly fine way of measuring, right? 1.3585. How much more accurate do you need to get in a measurement when you're dealing with jewelry? And I would argue would turning on double-sided helps. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, like in a case like this, it could very well help. To be deadly honest, I'm lazy nowadays. I'm used to being able to, normally I'll just go here, hold down Shift, and then come back over here and just sort of drag this to my surface. And that way, I don't usually get those points that go way back into nowhere. And, that's just as easy. I researched how to make cheaper prints and figure out you can Dynamesh a shell and make everything inside hollow. Oh yeah, of course. Shelling is actually really easy. Well, okay, getting printable shells could be tricky if you have complex figures, but here, let's just do this. All you need to do is you grab an insert mesh, okay? Boop. And usually, because all you're going to do is punch a hole in this thing, right? And so we go IMM, insert mesh. Where are my primitives? Have they thrown them into a multi-mesh now? Oh yeah, here. All these used to be separate. Now they're all in one mesh. That's fine. Okay, so my capsule's fine. Normally what you want to do, trim front, just so you know. Oh, my dynamics are on. Come on. Just so you know, because whatever, when you're using an insert mesh brush, it goes 90 degrees. No, delete lower. Boop. It can only be. It can't have subdivision levels. I just deleted. it'll go 90 degrees off of that surface, right? And so you can see how now that's off. So we're going to go to cylinder, drag here. Right. Now I'm just going to use the gizmo. We're going to center it, then we're going to center it in the world. And now we know that's roughly centered, right? And the other thing you can do here is, I think we can, no, you'd have to do that with an object. This is fine. And so you just make sure that you're sinking right into the thickness of the surface. The other thing is, because of how the Dynamesh scale works, I know I say this all the time, but in here we're just going to slide this. Oop. We're going to grab that and slide it over. We're going to slide it over, slide over. Oh, that's the wrong button. That's why. And I have all my Dynamesh tools right here, so I just grab it and slide it over. So I'm not digging around in here, so I just keep my subtool window open. I pulled all that stuff out. And you can see right here it says create shell and then shell thickness. Once again, it's sort of like the, you know how you can Dynamesh something and then it's like, 27 polygons, and then when it's at 128, well, here, we'll Dynamesh this. I'll show you exactly what I mean. Oh, crap. We already have that in there. Yeah, that's here. Let's just do this real quick, and then we'll discuss that part. So we'll turn off that. So I'm going to guess at 10, 9, 10, whatever. The first one almost never works, so it's not really a problem here. Dynamesh, you go create shell, and you have to have an insert mesh in the same tool. No, that's what I was going to say. The thickness is a different thing altogether here, and I'll show you. So I always just start out with 128. It's just to see what it does. Turn on create shell. Turn on create. Oh, it has to be a Dynamesh already. All right. Okay. This wasn't a Dynamesh. Oh, we can just do it this way. Oh no, we can't. Scheisse. Sorry. Like I said, I'm split parts. Okay. So this has to be a Dynamesh. Here, let's just talk about this real quick. So you could say I start it with 128 because that's the default. We have 50,000 active points. And how they get 50,000 is it is the scale of the object in world space. Yeah. That's, yeah, without a doubt. We kind of got to this point backwards because we were showing something else, and yes, you would normally attack this slightly more organized. Here, let's append these. Oh, I just slid everything. Merge visible. So if you have a number of tools you merge visible, it'll start a new subtool for you. And so we'll come over here. Merged. And then you just go split to parts. Okay. So now we have our cutter and our thing. In this case, you can then in turn do live. Well, here we go. Oh, wrong button. I have to hold Control key to slide that around. You can use live Boolean. You have to turn transparency off to see how deep it's going to cut. And then what you can do is you make that negative. Okay. This has to be a Dynamesh. You then merge this down as a negative. You can take this, merge it down, merge it down. Okay. And then under Dynamesh, you choose, oops, slide it back over this way. You go create shell. Why is my create shell just not working? Oh, because it's not an active Dynamesh. Here we go again. split the parts. Okay. This needs to be an active Dynamesh. And you can see how now we have it at 38 million at this. Now let's undo that. W, scale this up, and Dynamesh. And you see how it's 770,000 polygons. How Dynamesh works is its relative size to the world space. So that's why I say I just do everything at 128 the first time just to see what's going to happen. And then you can slide this to get whatever your desired base is. 128 or 700 is fine because it's going to hold all our edges. So we'll just go from there. Get this, bring this up. Obviously this needs to change scale. Bring this down. Okay. Create shell. Wait, boom. Merge down. No, merge down as a negative. Right. Merge down. Okay. And now create shell. Thickness 10. Really? Why are you just giving me grief here? Or is it thinking? Oh, it's thinking. I'm like, heavy meshes, you can't give thicknesses even if you can. Is exact normals. Heavy. Well, I mean, now, so, okay, so here. Yeah, escape, fine, stop, everybody. Yeah, oh, that's because I hit that button 13 times. Okay, so here, and let's just get a big square. Append, big square. Let's make a big, no, square. We want the square to be big. All right, we're going to drag this over here. We got that start. We're going to make this a negative. We're going to turn my Boolean on. And this way you can come in here and you can sort of preview your wall thicknesses, right? So you can see it gives you all of this. The inside of the Dynamesh create shell is usually squirrely, right? It's unsmooth. It's because it's calculating inwards, so you have all of your geometry kind of crushing on one another, and just how it thinks, you always get these weird surfaces. But your wall thickness is accurate, right? It's consistent and accurate. And you can, come on, you can go through the thing and check your wall thicknesses. And once again, people are like, oh, well, what's my wall thickness? Well, you just go to Y, come over here, move it. And right now our wall thickness is like 1/10 of a millimeter. This is a fairly small object anyway. I wasn't really. But that's the easiest way to get a consistent shell. And then what you can do, oops, turn this, let's go back up to here, turn this off. These are separate polygroups now. They used to be all the same polygroup. Now they're separate polygroups, so that's super helpful. So you just hold down Shift and Control, tap it. Oh, you have to get out of your Transpose Tool, tap. And so now you have your inside, right? And you can come back in with smooth. No. And you can literally smooth it out. And now if you're doing like complex hard surfaces and such, this can be really tricky because what you're now doing is creating places on the inside of your model that can create failures in your prints. So you have to be really careful when you create shells that you are, if you're not using something, yeah, of course you can, yeah. But you need to remember, like, let's say a figure, you're going to wind up with a much more complex internal shell than this. and in turn, you're going to have a lot of failed prints if you're not careful. A lot of the printing software or the supporting software isn't very intelligent. That's the, one of the things I'll really give Forum to is that their software for the supporting is actually very intelligent. And if you are even halfway careful, you're not going to have failures. I mean, you may wind up with thick prints and you may be picking supports off for a long time, but you're not going to have failed prints. I haven't played with the Moonray software, so I can't testify to how smart or dumb it is. They seem to be getting very nice prints off of it. The Solus, the last time I used the Solus, it did not have support software, but supposedly they have support software. I don't know how good it works or not. And then when you start to get up into the bigger professional printers, you're dealing with Magix or their proprietary software. Like SolidScape, you don't need to support. It builds a secondary wax. So it lays down red wax, which is your support wax, and blue wax, which is your wax. And so you don't support anything because it's building it up, and you throw the whole lump into this solvent and it eats the red away, and now you have your thing. And that's the other incredibly nice thing about the SolidScape printers is that you don't have to worry about supporting them. Red wax! Okay, we're going to discuss the blue material again, just because you keep doing that. I'm going to now make you go through my Mod Dirty Blue lecture. So, I don't know, does everyone know why I use Mod Dirty Blue? Any guesses? Here, let's get clay tubes. So, at the end of the day, these are not three-dimensional objects, right? And so we have no realistic expectation of what this is, right? This is casting an artificial shadow. This is casting, artificial highlights. This is a computer-generated image. I know, duh. But the blue, the Mod Dirty Blue, is the most realistic representation. There's a flat gray. I can't remember which one it is. It wasn't quite that reflective. It might be this one. But see, even here, this one has... See how you lose your outline on this? It wasn't that. It might have been one of the skin shaders. See, I can't even remember which one it is. I don't like working on white. I find it too bright and contrasting, and I find this to be easy on the eyes when you're staring at it for 18 hours a day. And the other thing is when I come in and I do this, I know how deep that is, because this, and I mean, I've tried, we'll just look at my, material menus. I've tried lots of different things to try to get that, what I'm getting out of the machine. Is it what I'm seeing? And I developed like a little test block, and I looked at it through all of them. I don't know if you guys saw my monkeys, but I used hot red because it was really exciting and it's fun and it's blah blah blah. Pablander. And you can come in here and let's turn this down to 2 or even 1. Let's go with 1. And this is at 1 intensity, and you can see you come in here and you're being really subtle, and you're trying to get it, and look at how much really, we get this really subtle surface texture that we've been really working on, and we're super stoked. And yet it's not there. Ma is, oh God, here we go. I'm so sorry. I can't even remember my own name. he makes a lot of materials, and I think actually a lot of his are in the. I think this is part of the basic ZBrush download stuff that you can get off the website. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. God, I suck at this. So you can see I'm using that brush here, and I'm pressing the hell out of it, and we're getting very little stuff. Where if you're using something that's high contrast, just look at how the different materials project that very subtle surfacing, you know. So you can see how the material is incredibly important, because what is the actual physical aspects of the lines that you're putting on. And if you don't have a material that sort of represents the actual depth, you know, oh, there you go. When you start to come in and you're like, okay, well, I really want to do some fine lining, and you're like doing this, and you're pretty happy with your strokes, I know that, well, that's going to be there, right? This is roughly how it's going to come out. And, these are going to be subtle. And I know that with the SLA printing, everything comes out just a touch soft because it really is liquids, being fused together with light. So there's no super crisp edge there. And when I say super crisp, I'm psychotically anal. So it's the library, some are only on the forums. Yeah, he really makes some beautiful brushes. But through, it's 11 years now of dealing with trying to find the material that is going to give me what I put down. The Mod Dirty Blue is by far the most consistent, without a doubt. And this, I cannot tell you how important it is. I really can't, because I've seen a lot of people, people in my class, people I go to tutorials with, and they're like, oh, Tomas, we've been getting some. I went to this company and kind of tailored a thing for their employee. They only needed to do like a handful of things, and most of it was just applying textures to stuff. And then they kept contacting me, and they were just like, oh, dude, our textures just started showing up, and da-da-da-da, and they sent me the thing. And they were using this weird green, and I don't know where they got it. I haven't really seen it, but it was this weird green, but it had a really high contrast, or, whatever in your material, I don't know, like wax modifiers. Like you could come in here and change your depth, darkness, and all of this stuff. And whatever it was really dark. So, he's like doing this, and it looks like he's doing this. And then when they print it out, none of what he puts is there. And I'm like, I told you use the dirty blue, I mean, you can come in here and, change the color if you really don't like the blue. But the point is that, man, this works. And yeah, you could spend a week. I spent a lot more in a week, I guarantee you, trying to figure out what material printed right. And yeah, I just don't, waste your time getting good at what you do and worrying about how it's going to come out of the print. Don't get clever with your materials. Trying to be clever never gets you anywhere. You're that clever guy who doesn't make good models, So that's why I use Mod Dirty Blue. The other way of now doing your coring, let's just duplicate this. And it takes a little fuddling with, but you can just make a core. That's your start. Make this a negative. And then turn that on. All right. And then you can see that these are not the same. But Y, straighten center, and then you could just shrink this, and you can come in and play with how it sits. Now, often you're just going to have to stretch this and make it work. You could kind of fuddle with it and get it, you know. The problem with just scaling is obviously you need to then come back in and sort of push that up, because when we're coring things, it's not just as simple as, taking the one thing and stretching it down, right? But this, if you use your square to hide, and you actually use something that is the same, which this one isn't, as you can tell, it moved a little. As you're scaling, you come in, scale it roughly to the thickness you wanted it to be, and then, mask this off and push it up here, or pull it down here, and then flip it, and you can push that up there, and you can play with it that way as well, And this is cleaner, and often you don't always want an exact mirror. Wall thicknesses, if you're trying to get a consistent, like let's say you're using gold, yes, you want a consistent thin wall, so you don't want, a ton of it. You're trying to save as much material as you can. And so, that is the easiest way to create a shell, yeah. But there's a lot of cleanup on it. Okay, did that answer the question about the shelling? Or did I just yabber on? Sorry guys, I'm exhausted, so I don't know if I'm answering or not. Hopefully that gave you kind of two different ways of dealing with that. So let's see. Okay, good. So the other thing I wanted to show you, so I did this a long time ago. And so what I did is, this is sort of my acorn shape. And these are going to be made out of glass. And then we needed a top, right? And so what I had to do is I came in here and I literally just hollowed this out, and then I projected it to this, right? Well, now we don't have those issues. Now you can start with this was the base shape I started with, right? My acorn top, and I decided that was an acorn bottom. And I think we're all familiar enough now. I always say that, and I've been told that I have absolutely no clue what other people understand, and I should just explain myself. So, and here we go. Once again, that quickly we created that, where that would have taken me, 10, 15 minutes, and then the projections, and then blah, blah, blah. So now you don't even have to worry about this being a hollow part, right? Because as we come down and iterate, and, we make these things, before I had to stress about making sure that these seams worked, because I decided this was the hook that we were going to use. And, guys, we just don't have that problem anymore. You now come here, you can iterate this, you bring this on, you come here, you kind of grab enough of it, you turn this back on, W, we just kind of drag it down, and then we W, slide it to where it's sort of center of the thing. And I'm not even going to worry about trying to get them to match perfectly yet. And now, like this, you do your jing-wingly, and now you don't even have to combine this stuff. You just bring this down. You're like, okay, that's sort of what we want. We turn live boolean off because we want to see our cutter. We have our top. We have our hook. Merge visible. Get it out of this tool so you now have it in your own thing. Especially when you're iterating. You have an iteration master file, right, with all the different things and all the different parts and all that. Merge. Come split the parts. Okay. And the other thing splitting the parts does is sometimes when you cut and chop and twist, you get these floating parts. And I knew this one was going to do this. That's why I did it. And you can see here, we'll turn everything else off. And see how we just have this thing? Well, God only knows where this came from. This came from either when I hid something and then redynameshed it, or yeah, it could have come from any number of steps that I've done. And I find when I'm cutting and chopping and iterating and splicing, see, here's another weird surface frame. See, it's just these two polygons, right? Or a few of them, whatever they are. And this is just chatter noise. These are, in the printing world, these are called noise shells. So here you can delete, and this is another way, and this is why I will almost always merge visible to a different tool. And no, delete all was not what we wanted. Delete. Okay. This is a dangerous combination for me. I do that all the time. That's almost why when I'm iterating, chopping, twisting, making things shuffle around, I will always merge visible to a different tool and then separate parts or split two parts. And that'll get rid of all the garbage geometry that happens. And if you think that you have clean models and you have no garbage geometry, you'd be wrong. And so now we come up here, we go down, we take this, we merge down. Okay. Frame. And now we have these two together. You could I have auto groups right here outside of my polyform because I do a lot of this where I iterating, chopping, and shifting. Auto groups is real important outside because now, you know, we can come in here, boom, mask, bring it back. And, you know, it just gives me a lot of control over our individual pieces. I think during the summit, it was nice to see that other people, that I'm not just insane. A lot of people keep on the same, they don't merge these yet. They don't turn this into one single Dynamesh yet. You keep it into, you keep it in polygroups. And then that way you can act on it as one part, you know, boom, boom, you know, you can alter it as it were one part. But then let's say you needed to come in here and just work on this guy. That never works with that turned on. You know, now you can come in, selectively mask, turn it on. Easy way to mask different groups. It's an easy way of being able to work on this part without affecting that part, and then merging them together at sort of the end. But here, let's fill this in just so we have an example. Oh, I'm like, why isn't my clay tubes working? Make sure you turn backface masking on. Does everyone know backface masking, right? I don't know how many of you do this. I know we all do it. We work on one side, and then we're like, oh my God. Well, yeah, backface masking, super important. Oh, look, I already did myself in there. There we go. Backface masking, we're just going to fill this in a little just so we see the Boolean actions, just in case people don't. And yes, you must make sound effects when you work, or you're going to be really bored. All right, so we have this hollowed version thing. We now have our cutter. We're going to bring it down. Going to make that our star. We're going to make that a negative. We're going to turn this on, turn live Boolean on. And now you can see that it's cutting away some of that stuff, but it's not cutting away enough, right? And so now this is where, with live Boolean on, you can come back. What did I just, no, you don't want groom twister. What was this? This is clay tubes, right? Was it? Yeah, okay. And you can see by coming in and brushing, oh, you need to be on the right tool. Coming in and brushing, you can really tune it around that cutter, right? So you know what is moving, what's not moving. So either by brushing, you can also just do it by using the move tool. Grab it and just pull it in. And now you're seeing where your sharp edges end, right? We're not worried about the outside right now, obviously. But this is a way to make sure that all your edges are clean and everything's where you want it, you know, because now you're like, oh, okay, well, here, let's bring this down because it's going to have to go under that lip. Or, you know, with your live Boolean on, you can move your tool around the cutter and really see where things are hitting. And when you're doing things like this that intersect, it's important to be able to preview that. And that's what the cutter's allowing you to do. Sorry, I can't see, guys. Click on the check mark on the right. Videos. Oh, okay. Talking about videos, but basically, hello. What's what? Oh, it's an acorn. We're just running through some things. All right, so let's go back to our iteration list, right? So now let's go back to our foundation shape. Where'd you go? That's it. Yeah. No, that's it. There. And I think we went over this some ways, but I think we should talk about it as well. Let's smooth this off. So this is just a smoothie thing. SK trim. So when I did this before, we had to use, like, to punch these holes, I had to make a shape, drop it in, and then use a negative, drop it in, redynamesh, and it would take the holes and cut them in. So obviously now we don't have to do that. But, you know, how do you think about getting negative space in your base model? So I would always suggest, especially, you know, we're using a rotation. We want this acorn top shape. So you make your base shape. And for jewelry, this is really, truly, and absolutely one of the most powerful things about ZBrush is that you can create really fast iterations of stuff, because end of the day, you know, we're not working on a figure or a creature for 3 weeks or things like that. We need to get objects out. You need your SKUs. You know, you want to get as much variety out of the things you know sell, so you can then in turn optimize your selling, right? And so we were selling acorns super well. And so now we need a whole bunch of different acorns. So there are a handful of ways of now sort of approaching it. I always start with clay tubes. And I'll just explain that real quick, just in case people don't know. So you hear a lot of people use clay buildup, and they're getting it, and, you know, it allows for some really fast material to go on. I don't like clay buildup because it doesn't allow me to control the height of my strokes. And since we are dealing with real objects, being able to know that you can do this and you're like, oh, I like where I'm going, right? Oh, and then all of a sudden you have something that's like, you know, 10 millimeters thick. That's not very helpful. Clay tubes acts as a layer brush. And so I can come in and I go like this, and I can scratch on this surface all I want, right? And it's not going to, it is going to stay at that level for the most part, right? See how it's not building up, right? It's just laying that one layer on. So what it allows me to do, and if any of you have ever listened to me, you know that thinking of these objects in steps as opposed to illustrations is incredibly important for jewelry. And so you'll get a lot of artists and they'll come in and they're going to be like, oh, I love this pattern. It's sort of a rope. And then I want these little circles. And then I really like little lines. And then we have a line around the line. And now we have other lines. And we're going to do little scoops in it. And oh, look at how visually complex this is. And then you go back here and it's just this flat, dumb thing. Because these are just lines in a reflective surface. So your brain, because the light is going to work that way, it's treating all of this as one surface. And yeah, you're going to get dark lines in it, but your brain still sees the transition of light along one surface. And how it works with small metallic objects, and to be deadly honest, your character models and all of that as well, is that if we have different layers, see already how much more complex this shadow is? And your brain knows that these are on different layers, right? And so as we move it around, see how they're reflecting at all kinds of different angles? That creates visual attention. Your brain looks for pattern. Your brain is a really fast thing. And it really understands, oh, that's one surface with lines in it, or that's a bunch of surfaces piled onto one another. So when I'm blocking things up, here, let's turn this down a little. When I'm blocking things up, I'm always thinking about how the layers work on one another, right? And so, oh, if I want an arrow shape here, I'm going to come in and I'm going to not make it a line. I only put lines and things after I know where my surfaces are. I use lines to define my surfaces, but not to conceive them. And so you can see how, you know, we can make these complex things, and half of the story is what the layers are doing with one another. And you can see how this is a much less complex shape than the thing I showed you just a minute ago, right? But visually, it has a lot more reflecting surfaces. It's a transitional form. And so in very, very little physical depth, I can create a lot of visual depth. And so why I don't use the Buildup tool much, I use it for some things. But, you know, if I'm doing this, well, how do you know what, you know, how do I know where I'm going? And I'm being a little melodramatic right here just to get a point across, but how do I know that this is higher than this, you know? But when I'm working like this, and with the clay tubes brush, I know that this is all on the first level. I know when I come over this that this part right here is 2. Now this peak is 3, and now it's 4, and now it's 5. And now I come back here and I move this, so this is roughly at 2 and 3, and now it's at 4, right? And then now this is at 2, right? And so my levels don't change until I pick the brush up, and then I'm adding another height level to it. And so it's easy for me to be able to figure out and dictate where things lie in physical space if I'm thinking of it as just laying layer on top of layer on top of layer. And it allows me to get, it's why my things print really well and why my surfaces and designs read cleanly in printing is because I'm viewing these things as these very nice, subtle layer changes, and layer changes reflect light differently. And as you look at an object and the surfaces are very active and it's reflecting light at you all the time, you now have objects that have visual interest and retain visual interest. And as you can see, we have all this depth and we've added very little height to it, right? Does everyone see that? Everyone kind of sticking with me on this concept here? And so then what I will do if I really want to come in and make sure this stuff reads well, I'm still going to sculpt my lines in. Instead of cutting my lines in, I'm always going to come in and try to define it by sculpting first as opposed to cutting in, or what I drawing, right? I want to sculpt my detail in before I draw it in, because you wind up coming in with really cool sort of, you're like, oh, well, here, let's scoop this back in because I want that edge to be there, as opposed to going, oh, well, I'm going to put a sharp edge there, right? Or, oh, I'm going to cut a lip in here. Well, this allows you to really think about this, the curved and compound, the compound and convex curves that can create lines, right? And you can see how I'm working on this being a line, a visual line, right? But I'm building my piece up to it. I'm working the surfaces where they're creating their own lines. And you can see how much more active that is, that I had to scoop this out and kind of make this a bow going down. And now I have, you know, a nice edge here. But all of the light is telling me there's an edge there. It's not a cut, right? It's not a cut in. It's the surfaces that are defining the fact that we have visual surface breakage. And so, you know, okay, so now we have these complex surfaces. We now have lines. Come in. The other thing this does is it really allows you to think about what surfaces are going over what other surfaces, what are going under, and why. And those are important decisions to make, you know, because once again, you're telling a visual story no matter what you're putting out there. So you need to define what that story is. See, that's puffy, so we just knock off the top. But even with that knocked off, this is still going under that, right? And so when we do come in and we start to sharpen our surfaces up, right? And I'm obviously not, woo. Normally I have more geometry here, so I'm not trashing things that quickly with smooth. You know, now we have these steps. So then normally my process is I will take this SK twist, and from what I understand, and I still can't remember his name, he's a Japanese artist who makes these brushes. He does a lot of like anime characters or anime toys, and oh man, he is a rock star. His work is really nice, but he makes these fabulous brushes, and I guess he's now going to be on ZBrush. He's now ZBrush living or streaming with us, and I'm excited about that. I hope you guys watch it because he is rad. Sorry, water. So now I usually get to this point. So now I will come in with SK Twist, and this is one of his hair tools. And there's a roll tool, but whatever his settings are on this, it just winds up staying cleaner as we roll it, where the traditional, or just the straight tool, what's going on? Why is it not working? Is something masked? Redynamish, whatever. Am I on the wrong tool? No, that's working. Okay. I preach about this tool and now it's... Oh, I don't have... See, I'm like... So, I will normally come... Ooh, all right. See, I changed the intensity. Things get weird. Okay. Yeah, let's get this back down here. All right, there we go. So, I don't know if you'll use twist or round tools. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Dude, he's great. He really is. I really like his work, and the time and energy he spent on his brushes and materials so he can then in turn produce toys quickly. He's put a lot of thought behind it. Unfortunately, I'm a wackadoodle OCD wingnut, and if I started making brushes, I'd stop sculpting and I'd just sit there and start making brushes. So I use this now. Yeah. With this is a bad example. So with radial symmetry or any of the symmetries, the twist tool doesn't really work because, well, here, just look. So you see how I'm trying to create an edge here, and you see how my rolls here and my cuts here. You see down here how it's going in the other direction. Let's turn our radial off real quick and I'll show you why that's happening. So yeah, radial's off. So if I go this way, see how it's rolling over in this direction? But if I change my direction, it's rolling in the other direction. So when you're using radial, it's looking for, let's say an X. It's looking at XZ, and it's like, okay, so you're going up and over, so that is a roll this way. But on the radials, when you're down here, it gets confused and it rolls the other direction. So this is a tricky thing to do on. It will work if you're using one symmetry, like if you're using X symmetry, it'll work fine. But the second you switch symmetries and you make it an XZ or an XY or radial, it starts to squirrel out on you. But I'm still going to use it, and I'm just not going to use my radial tool to do it. And so normally I come in and I kind of roll that edge up. And now do you see what's happening? By rolling this edge, I'm now creating a reflective light surface here. Okay, so once again, let's come back over here for a second. And you got to remember what we are doing is sculpting in light. And if you're never bringing your model out of the computer, or if you're going into a game or something like that, honestly, you don't need really dramatic reflective surfaces because you're painting that stuff on. I mean, I know people who paint the highlight on and then they use the industrial lighting or the environmental lighting, but they've painted, highlights. So it's forcing that in as you're doing your figures and stuff. Unfortunately, we don't get to paint surfaces on. We need the geometry and we need light to actually work on our surfaces. So the thing to remember is this. The nice thing about roll, or as I use the SK twist hair, which is obviously just a tendency of the roll, is look at this line and now look at this line. Okay, this is a nice dark line, but you see how this is one surface. Just look at how the light runs, right? It's just a big flat surface. Where here we have this roll. So, the light's reflecting bump, 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 bump as you go around that curve. So this look at how hot that line is, right? It's very bright. This is a straight, dark, clean edge. Now there are times you want straight, dark, clean edges, but those aren't times you're separating layers. So we're here, we have a nice clean edge. We come back with SK. He's going to stream. He's like, that dude jacked all my brushes. Um, and I tend to fill this back in just a hair. So now I have a surface, right? But it has this bright rolly edge. So you can see how this, look at how much light play is going on here to the right compared to the crack. So that's how I like to try to think about my surfaces as well, or my layers as well over here. And so I come back in, I will grab my SK twist, I'll come in and oops, so we're going down, and I will just knock this edge up on everything. And I will actually always do this, where at some point I will turn the radial off, and I will come in and do this by hand without the symmetry on. And what that does is it creates little differences in every single one of these. And now your brain is going to see that these are not clones. Hello, Orion. These are not clones, but they are individual instances. And so, once again, our brains are trained to recognize symmetry. And so, when we give it the foundation of symmetry that it wants to define something as a aesthetically pleasing object, and then we go back in and just knock it off symmetry a hair, your brain looks for why that's not perfect. And what that does is it creates more optical time on the object. So our brain craves symmetry, but when it sees that it's symmetrical, it's like, oh, that's great. And then it moves on, because it knows that that's great. It doesn't have to analyze why it's great. It's symmetrical. It knows it. Boom, it's great. Where we come back in, this was symmetrical, but we come back in, we do this to each one, and I tend to like, because we're about to do multiple steps on these, right? And we're going to do it to all of them, but do one step to each row, because we're going to kind of do this to everybody, right? But do one step to each row, and then do the next and the next. And that way, once again, in that symmetry concept, you get into, your hand will get into the stroke, you'll do it, it'll be consistent. And even if it's consistently odd, it's odd. I'll come back in with clay fill and just fill this up, because I only want the roll on the edge to be towards the outside, right? Let me just come through, do it to everybody. And this just allows you to have a little bit more consistency in your stroke. Right, now come back in and I'll just smooth off that back edge. Normally I would be doing this at a slightly higher resolution, because I use smooth stronger because I tend to work the top end of my resolutions. Like, I'm not one of the people who does low resolution and then slowly works up to my higher resolution, because when we're doing jewelry, we don't want to do the part once, find all those great spots, do the part again, find those great spots. Where if I get up to my working, I tend to start working in the 6 to 12 million poly, so I have at least 6 subdivision levels, depending on, and see, we only have 3 subdivision levels right now because I dynamesh this big, excuse me, but normally, and I dynamesh this because we were looking at the other thing, sorry, this has not been in order by any means. Normally I'll have 6 or 7 subdivision layers, because that allows me to really be able to alter the form yet keep all of my sculpting detail that I've already put into the part. We'll talk about that in one second. So as you can see, let's go back out here and see how hot that edge is, see how bright it is, and you see how it's bright here and it's bright from here. So all of those edges, it becomes a very active edge because it has a roll, and then that roll, you know, obviously over here, what's more dynamic, this edge or this, right? You can see that bright hot spot from lots of places where this is either on or off. Does that make sense to everybody? That's a really important concept to wrap your head around. So even like, let's say you're making a mech or something, right? And you do this, and people who watch me are probably like, Tomas, we are so sick of hearing this. Right? And you're like, oh look, I have my little panel, right? But really, if you notice, the only thing that's hot is that edge because it's the exact same plane, where if you came in, and honestly, if you look at Furio's work, this is why a lot of his work is absolutely dynamic, is that he's always using compound curves. It's not one direction. It's always like this twist. And why they look so dynamic is that you have light traveling over complex convex curves and concave curves, and instead of just, oh, it's a line, it's flat. So we'll come here. Let's go to Y. Let's drag this out. And once again, you'll see I've put this here. My white dot's on the center. I hold down Alt. Are we in Move? Let's make sure we are Move and not Twist or something weird. Yes, we are in Move. And then just bow it up just a touch, right? Put a little bit of bow in there. And now let's come this way. And what we're going to do is let's bend this edge down. Once again, I'm just holding down the Alt key. Flip it over. Hold down Shift, hold down Alt. Bend that down just a little. So now we have a slightly more complex surface. And even from the front, do you see how this is one tone, but here you're starting to have shade go down? Here, let's go to something that's more dramatic. Right? You can see that, you see how this just all changes tone, right? And we can draw as many lines on this as we want. Right? But look at, I mean, look at this area, right? All you're getting is the highlight off this edge, highlight off this edge. That's the only light change you're getting. But now look at how it's rolling around on this surface. Does that make sense? So you're going to hear me harp on it. And I'll tell you what, even people who sat through my class like 3 or 4 times, I still harp on it because it's a very easy thing to forget because you're into your mode, you're working on your thing, and then you just forget. I forget crap all the time. So well, I forget everything, honestly. But even on these, like if I wanted them fairly, like I'll come in and sort of build facets into my surfaces, right? And well, I should be doing this on symmetry, but and so I'm always sculpting in light. That is the first thing I'm thinking about when I'm working on something is how is the light going to react? Look at this, and I'm just going to cut lines into it. Right? Because let's face it, this is what 99% of people do. Right? Look at that, and then look at this. Oops, wrong direction. Smooth out. Clay fill behind it, so it's not a line. Come back with, oh look, SK trim smooth polish. Now I'm all nervous. He's gonna be like, dude. All right, so this is what most people do, right? You make a small layer, you cut your lines around it, and then this is what I try to do. I mean, this is obviously a melodramatic issue, but you have this, and honestly, I'll probably come back in here and let's smooth this off, smooth this off. I will either take slide. This is a pretty bumpy surface, so I'll take move, get a big brush, and you notice I'm not out here. I kind of get on my shade, and I just tug that surface back under a touch. Just come over here and tug that surface back under a little. Smooth, smooth, so you don't have any like weird crumbling. And now, I mean, I'm assuming you can see that this is a much more dynamic thing than this. And I mean, I'll clean that up, right? I mean, just look at all the different ways light plays off that surface. It's still on top of the other surface. With just these lines cut in, you can't even really tell if that's on top of the other surface or not, right? And so this way, you can keep it looking from what I call an illustration or drawn on detail, and it becomes sculpted on detail. And I cannot iterate how important this is if you're going to printing. And I would argue this is important even if you're not going to printing and you're just making models for games or figures or whatever. But if you are trying to get a model out of the computer and into milled or printed, these little things are a huge difference. The other thing to kind of wrap your head around is using texture to differentiate your surfaces. So you'll see that I often, here we're going to use that as, oh. I also tend to like, you have to push down your space bar and then hold down control. If you just hold down control and then hit your space bar, you keep getting this, and that's not what you want. Hold down space bar, hit control, and take my focal length almost to 100. I mean, if it's 100, it's no big deal, but I tend to like it in between that, in the 90s, because I want my masking to be sharp most of the time, because I'm using my masking to define edges, and so I don't particularly like the blurry thing. I also tend to go over what I'm masking and then unmask to exactly where I want it to be. It's just it's a back and forth, but what it allows you to do is tune your form. And the more you are thinking about where these curves are, the more thought you're putting into where these curves are. I know that sounds trite, but it's very true. You know, who is it? An unquestioned life is a life not lived. Well, an unquestioned model is a model not very well sculpted. And I'm just going to use this texture real quick. Only because it's here. Just smooth it a touch, just so we don't have surface chatter. And so you can use texture to define surfaces, right? So look here. I mean, this is, let's measure. Nothing. Went the wrong way, sorry. Y. Okay, there we go. All right, so one sec, let's get there. We can get there. Where's, oh, okay. That is 1/10 of a millimeter. So this does not exist. You know, there is, you know, it is not a depth feature, right? But you can see how much depth we have in this, or how much separation of surface we have. Get rid of that. I mean, look, you get a little itty bitty shadow right there, and see how the shadow is helping define that? This looks like a smooth surface sitting on top of a craggy one, right? where let's just go over here and let's take a line, and I'll try not to be so hyper melodramatic, but as does that, but that's a hard line. What happens if we come back in here? Do you see what I'm saying? And so, and why this looks like it, because once again, as the light rolls across the surface, watch it. Watch how the light rolls here. It's as if that line is not there. I mean, it looks like a dark line, but you're not reading it as a surface change, right? Do you see how the highlight just kind of goes right over it? Where here, we now are using texture, not just a curved and or beveled surface, to break this surface off of the surface. You're using a texture to do so. And so your brain registers that as different surfaces. Well, now we come back in with twist. We just roll this edge a little. The setting on this brush is a little off. Sorry, I don't know what when I was futzing with it to get it to work, I changed it. It shouldn't be leaving this bright a line on the backside, but it's okay. And then we'll take SK Fill and come back in here and just tap this a little. Come back in and mask it. What's dynamic? That whole dynamic thing as the default drives me nuts. Just a touch. Come back in. And remember that clever little tool I showed you with Smart Resend? When you're, or Smart Transpose. When your surfaces are this close together, it doesn't really, it's just easy enough to put it by hand, because I'm also not completely married to that surface. All right, whatever. Are you, oh, hi. Well, it's good to have you on Twitch, and I'm glad you went to the summit. It was great. It's always exciting to see. We meet, you know, we've known each other for years and years and years on the forums and stuff, and it's always cool to put a face to the people, you know, you work around and see their work. It's always fun to see the people who are doing the work. And for the most part, you know, we're a pretty prickless community. It's a pretty, that sounded odd. There are very few pricks at our community. They are, it's a really good group of people. So you can see I'm just tapping that just so there's a little step, and I'm just going to drag this in just a touch, and oh, I'm like, that's pulling pretty hard. I tend to want to keep this down a lot more. And you can see how even at 16, we're still pulling pretty intensely. There we go. I just want to nudge it, right? And I hope you don't ask me to get out the ruler to tell you what that is, because we know that's still well below 1/10 of a millimeter. And look at how dramatically different. Hold on. Let me smooth that out just a touch. There's a little dent there that I hate. Sorry. I get weird about surfaces. Okay, so here. You know, tell me if you think I'm wrong, but this appears to be a plate sitting on top of a texture under another plate, and this looks like a bumpy surface with a line on it. You know, and of course, you don't need to use texture. We were just talking about texture at the time, but you can see how even microscopic layers and steps make the light reflect differently off of the surface of the object. And can't iterate it enough. If you're going into objects outside of the computer, this is the stuff that's going to make it right. It's going to make it appear dynamic, and it's going to separate your work from 98% of the people doing this. Because, man, I go to JCK all the time. I go to these jewelry shows. I know jewelry designers, and you know, the whole point of jewelry and small objects. I mean, I make jewelry, but I also make toys and all kinds of other stuff. So anything that's small object that's coming out of the machine, even large objects coming out of the machine, if it's actually a physical object, we are seeing it because there's reflective light. And how we send information to the eye for the brain to interpret makes things interesting or not. And as you're walking around and, cruising your city downtown or whatever, and there are certain things that catch your eye all the time. You're like, oh, I really love the front of that building. Oh, I really love the front of that building. Unless you're into just really big, flat, shiny surfaces, chances are there's something going on there. Even modern construction, that's mirrored and the such. There's one just outside of the Seattle. Hold on, let me. Printing a weight block so I can find out what the um, specific gravity of the black resin is. Okay, hold on. I think this will be worth it. I don't know what Seattle's football stadium is called. I don't want to hear any crap about my typing either. So, oh, here it is. So, see, all I had to do is put Seattle football stadium and then this building, because everyone's pissed at this building because it used to have this really great view over the water. But I find this building interesting because it's an incredibly reflective surface, and what we have is, you'll notice they put in certain dividers and it reflects different colors, but even in its most reflective, do you see how, this doesn't line up right? These don't line up right because these are all at different angles. This is, see how this here is it's not just a box. This is a taper. This is a taper. This is a taper. And I'll tell you what, you can't take your eyes off of it. It's really crazy because, it's this mirrored thing that's reflecting everything. But, and you can see here, they're trying to use this visual pattern, fine, thin, to break up the building. But, I mean, this thing is so successful and it is so dynamic. And when clouds are moving, and I'll tell you, I know why people are all peeved. Oh no, I don't even know what you're doing. Why people are peeved that, like, you could see it out the building and you just keep looking at it. You're like, what? So I think this is a prime example of how these angles are used to make things reflect differently. And what's crazy is the clouds moving this way, they're moving differently here. Does that make sense? And so this is just a crazy building to watch because you're just like, and this is the same thing as every small object. How light reflects, because this is reflecting in a completely different direction that this is reflecting. You can take something that's 14 squares or rectangles, and Tony isn't here, is he? He's like, it's a rectangle. Right? So this is what I'm trying to get you to wrap your head around. And here, let's get, where's ZBrush? Here we go. Okay. All right, so that's that here. So let's get back to some ideas of cutting through surfaces. So normally if I'm going to start punching through surfaces, I want a flat surface, and I use planar flatten line. And you pick a spot, and then it just creates a plane between those two spots. My brush is pretty small. Hold on, let's turn radial back on. I use this tool a lot. I use my planar tools a lot because when you're doing stuff, you often want to start from a flat surface and then change it, and you can come back in here. You can get things to be hard surface modeling. I tend to like the organic, but the hard surface, our brains are trained to recognize it. And so, it's good. You can come in quickly and, just get some good surface in. So we're going to cut through something. Gotta say, I never really give much thought to Windows. Yeah. No, it's look at modern, architecture. You have to get the visual interest somewhere because it's no longer beautiful ornament. Well, for the most part, there are people doing it, but aren't a lot of them. So in turn, you have to figure something out, and all it comes down to is reflection. Everything that's cool is stuff that reflects coolly. Don't even get me started on subjectivity, and it's just sad. But I don't want to sound like Jim Carrey. Well, we're nothing, and I'm not doing anything. Blah. But there's some truth to all that in some ways. Okay, so planar flatten. All right. Morph. How'd I get morph? That wasn't the brush we were looking for. All right, so I want to punch a hole in here. I want these to be little windows going through. So there are a couple different options. You can just come in, mask, extract, all right, water. Sorry, my throat's thrashed from talking all weekend. Make sure you hit accept. And so now we have these little guys. I will flip this, go here, get off of Y, come up to the center. I know that that's the top. Oops. So we want to come up to that, and oh, I forgot. This leaves this black. Let's do this. Control W. Let's separate these out. Now we have to turn this off. Boom. And now we're going to Control W. And now those are different polygon set. Okay, so now let's just come up to these. W. Corrective, get it center, bring it up to the top here, and just pull this down, and that drags all those surfaces up to you, right? And now we'll go back, and then we're going to do the same here. No, does not work with that on. Go the same here. W, pull it up, center it just so you're not making anything weird. Let's pull it up a little more, drag all these surfaces. Oops. Oh no, they're there. Okay. I'm like, I don't know what I just did there. And now we bring this back. I did move it, didn't I? Maybe not. It's okay. And that is allowing our cutters to go through the piece. Often you'll want to re-dynamesh these because the pulling has, stressed your meshes some. Turn that off. Smooth. No, we don't want to smooth yet. We stretch it out. We will re-dynamesh a little higher than that. You can see once again, dynameshing really is just a mystery. Just smooth them out a touch. Now we're here. Boom. Oops. We need to turn here. We'll just do that. Turn this off. Is this not my thing? Oh, it is. Okay. This is a subtractive. There we go. And so now you can see that that's going to punch through, right? And that's a quick, dirty way of doing it. You can also, if you want to be a little trickier about it, and let's say you didn't want it to be, well, the reason to do it this way is because you can control your geometry. And remember how you just saw all that geometry stretch because those were meshes? If you come in and, where are you there? Topology Brush. And we just go like this. Oh. Duplicate. Lower your res, because you don't need a lot of res on this. Delete higher. So that's fine. Hide that. And the reason you use this is if you want a lot of control over your geometry. And remember how we got stretching on the last part? Well, this allows us to come in with some very basic primitives. As opposed to a mesh, this is like a simple quad. And you can see how it's, you can either run another slice through there, or another slice through there until you get the exact shape you want, right? If you're not, like that's a bow, let's say we wanted that bow, just run it up the center and you start to get more of that bow. You can see how it's a tap off of the surface, and now you have these quads. Now here, we can come in and let's hide this guy again. No, we can't. Split to parts. Split to similar parts. Okay. And now these are all on one subtool. And you can now come in. Give me my lines back. And this is a way you can use the modeler. Right? Come in. Ba-da-da-da-dum. Oh. Before you do anything, see how this has crease on? Once again, in situations like this, I don't want those crease lines. I want it as a simple mesh as possible. So I'll come back into crease and uncrease all. Boom. Nope. Uncrease all. And you see how all those little lines went away? Does everyone see that? Right? Uncrease all. And now we are back to our basic primitive. We can come in here, select it, Q mesh that bad boy, drag it down. And you can see now we don't have any of that stretching issue that we did before. There are reasons to use Dynamesh sometimes. Well, one, it's quick and fast. But you can see here we're going straight off of our surfaces. There's no distortion in the pooling unless you tap it. And that, crimey, come on. And now we turn this back on. We make that a negative. We turn that off. Right? And so those are the easiest ways of doing it. It's also an easy way of doing additive. Like if you're doing inlay and the such, I find that the topological brush, I like using the topological brush better than masking because it allows me to start with really low topology. All right, so that's kind of that. Now, let us see. So, you know, for iteration, like I said, I usually have my iteration thing. The nice thing about the Boolean stuff, all you do is create Boolean mesh, and it'll give you a merged mesh up here. And now you can go off of another. Transpose Tool. Where is it? Okay. The other really simple thing here I want to show you. Let's just take this. Wow, look at that. That's pretty cool. Oh, another thing that I use the live Boolean tool for is when you start piling stuff up, I'll often there's coplanar. Even before you start dynameshing stuff, here I'm just going to open a bunch of things, right? And you have all this stuff. And let's say you're just dynameshing. You're not even going to do a Boolean mesh. You just want to dynamesh in one thing. We all know that coplanar surfaces make dynamit. You know, when your dynameshes blow up, 99.9% of the time it's because you have coplanar surfaces. And so this show coplanar really, well, of course I don't have a single coplanar surface. That's pretty shocking. Crying. All right, well that was a crappy example. Here, I'll just duplicate this. Duplicate. Oh, look. You know, and this will give you an idea of where you have coplanar surfaces before you dynamesh. And so if you're dynameshing a bunch of stuff together, turn on Make Boolean Mesh and check it out and see if there are trouble spots, because it's really simple just to come in and just, hold on, you know, tap that, and you haven't changed it much at all. All you have to do is get those surfaces off of one another, and that'll allow you to have much more successful dynameshes when you're combining a bunch of stuff. Because a lot of times, you know, you'll hit it and you have two things that are, you know, like 40 polys, and it starts spinning and spinning, and you're like, oh no, it's gonna blow up. So check your dynameshing with live Boolean mesh. And there are reasons to dynamesh and not live Boolean, but live Boolean has really solved so many problems. Quick texturing of surfaces. Here, let's just go. I think we're up here. Yeah. And let's hide that. This. Oh man, I rubbed my eyes. One sec. Wow, I must have touched something or picked something up, because I just touched my eyes and burned my eyes out. Alright, let's try this again. See if I can see. Holy cow. That's weird. Wow. Alright. Alright. Where's my stylus? Okay, so it was funny because they were talking about the VDM brushes, and for something like this where you're using radial and you're trying to get patterns in, and you're the VDM brushes are so powerful. They're so good. How many people out there actually use your VDM brushes? It's funny, there's a lag here, so I have to wait. Anyone? Okay. Well, I'm going to show you anyway. So we have this, and what's going on here? Oh, this is a shell. I'm like, what is that? And you want to do dimensional texturing quickly. So, well, you can, I mean, yeah, I know it's hard with the delay. With the hard surfacing, you can use your VDMs for hard surfacing as well. So here, let's append a plane. Go to our plane. I don't even know what that is. We'll delete it. I don't know what it is. It's gone. So we have our plane. No, that's a cube. What? Oh, that was... I deleted my plane. Okay. Oh, God. Sorry, guys. I really have just wiped ding-dong in some ways. All right, here we go. Our plane. Make sure you use a square plane. Divide that sucker up to where you get some geometry. And here, let's just take hard surfacing for granted. Let's say you want this to be I don't know if everyone here has seen me use Lazy Nezumi Pro, but it is an absolutely fabulous plugin, and it allows you to use sort of geometric constraints. And I'm just making a sort of and you hold down Control, boop, and we will bring this up. You hold down Shift and it locks on your degrees, so now that's 90. So I'm just going to make a weave here. Okay, so we have a little weave, and this right here is the real reason that I love this program, because we all know that we want to draw circles on projects, right? And we're trying to figure out how to get radial symmetry to draw a circle on something, and we never can figure it out. It's always a pain in the butt, and yeah, well, Lazy Nezumi allows you to look at that, draw circles. I don't know how many of you have problems drawing circles, but I tell you what, that right there is awesome sauce. And then it also has really cool things like where's radial lines. Move back to the center. Allows you to draw radial lines. I'm doing this because I want a little bit of detail in this. Right? We have a little rosette. We'll go back to ellipse. Draw a little line on again. Alright, look at that. Let's fill that up just a touch. It's kind of cool. It has all of these things are completely programmable. Like if you go into here, you can see you can drop. I mean, you can change how they graph out. You can change how. I mean, what you can do with it is actually pretty staggering. But here, let's put more teeth in this. And we'll do a little gear. Oh, maybe that was a little too many teeth. That's still close to too many teeth. That's right. And here we can actually make these a little smaller. And let's make our Z intensity a little higher. And so now let's our draw size a little smaller. Wrong button. And you can program it to do all kinds of like crazy patterns. It's pretty friggin' awesome. That didn't show up so good because it's not flat. Here, we can bring it out here. You can see how it does gears and it does sine waves and all kinds of goofy stuff. That's, sorry, got distracted there. It's a now, let's merge these smooth. Here. I'm not going to make a good one. It doesn't matter. I'm just trying to show you. So you come over here, come to Chisel Brush, and you see all these little tips. Chisel brushes are cool because those act as your cutting tool, and see how you can So you can obviously build like molding and stuff. Like if you want architectural details, sort of ribbing and things like that, you can see that you can quickly, where's Alt? Boom. And you know, you have these neat little things, and you can come in and make your own brushes, and I'm showing you how to make your brush right now, even though this is going to be a surface detail brush, not one of those. So you come over here, you go under brush, you go, see how we're in chisel, so we come over to brush and we go from mesh, and we have a new brush right here. So now when we come over here, and we come over here, and we have our radial symmetry on X. It's probably a Y actually. And oh, dynamics on. You come in here. No. We want drag. You come in here. You drag this on. And that is Z sub, not Z add. And you can see how you quickly created something that you can generate some really cool repeating patterns, right? And so that's very useful, but that just looks like an alpha, right? But let's go back to our mesh. Doop. And, oh, I see. Did I put it on the back? Whatever. Let's take snake hook. And, oh, well, here, let's do this. Come down here. Under deformation, you will see morph to grid. And you slide it all the way over, and it resets your grid, right? You have no. And let's turn X on. Yeah, we'll do this quickly. Start from mask. Everybody just loves their scales. Right? Flip. W. Bring you back to here. Rock that up. Get your Y. Shnoop. Get a little bow in it, because like I said, flat surfaces suck. Come here, put a little bow. I don't want it center, we want it up here. A little bow in it. And then just a touch of a return. Okay. Our rough scale shape. Draw. Get our smooth on. Tap that down. We want this to go under, so we want to make sure that this comes back down to sort of flat. And then we'll just give it a little bit of detail. And the other thing we really want is for this to overhang. And mask that off. And we are going to move. And we're going to punch that back. And we're going to make this kind of reach up and over so it has some dimension. Give this a couple of ridges. But that reach up and over is really important. We're going to then come over here and make sure our full scale's there. Flip it, because you noticed I moved all this stuff. These are dents. We morph back to grid. Right, now everything is flat. We'll come over here. We'll smooth that out. And now I'll take slide and just punch that back again. I don't want these little bumps in my surfaces because I have a sloppy slide. Once again, just come back in. And here, instead of morph to grid, we're going to, let's get that. We're going to use relax plane grid. All right. And that, ooh, wrong one. Okay, we'll use morph to grid. Fine. Fine. And we'll just take our slash tool, because slash is a nice, really dynamic thing. Turns the intensity down, make it pretty big, and we're going to cut down and under. Right. One more relax. Or one more morph, sorry. Because you really, this outside edge has to be flat or you get weird dimples when you start doing it. So now we have this kind of weird lumpy thing. And we're going to put just like a visual texture on it. All right, stop futzing. Right, so now we have this scale that has some texture. Smooth that back and out. Sorry. I want those edges to be a little bit more bowed out, so they'll actually cover one another. Yeah, that's a little better. All right. Okay, so now we come back up here. We go to our Chisel Brush. We have our little guy here. We go Brush from Mesh. It should show up right here. Boop. All right. So now when we go back to our little pot dude thing, and we have these little guys, we can now, you can see that that wasn't perfectly square. It had a slight rotation to it. See how this is higher than that? So you have to make sure when you come over here, frame this up. I had it tilted just a touch, right? Snap it, make sure it's there. Come back from mesh. This should work better. Yeah, see how much cleaner that is? See how the plane wasn't square? And now here the plane was square? So that's a real important. Just make sure that you have that shifted. And let's get rid of that and that. We'll come up here. We'll be like, oh, no touch. And what's nice is we'll come over here. Normally you want to go the other direction. Start and go over instead of try to come under. Here, let's do it the right way. And you can see how this is a super quick way of getting like a repetitive scale pattern that are overlaying. But you can see that there's actually dimensionality to those steps. So it really allows you to create, you know, scales are just the easiest way to show you because we all recognize the forms and the such. But, you know, you could do this with any geometric pattern and you're going to wind up with bad aim. You know, super fast way of getting some content on there, and then you can come back and just touch your stuff up, right? But how many of you tried to lay out scales and it happened that quickly? Yeah, probably not many. But the other nice thing is you could see how see how the back of that scale, right, was at ground level or at 0. So when I pull this up and under, these are above 0. So this slides up under that as opposed to just mangling everything. So, you can wind up doing some really cool things because of how they play together, And yeah, it's just a fast way of getting stuff in there. And I mean, we just scaled that whole thing that quickly, right? And you can see if you spend any time and energy on your scale, you can really tune that. You can make these interweaving forms. I mean, you can make this anything. But the power of the ability of taking something that is perfectly flat. No, that's the wrong thing. We need to go back here. Come down here. Morphed grid. I'm going to divide this one more time because I'm going to stretch this out a little more this time. Move elastic. Let's get this up and off. And then I'm once again not being super careful here. This is my cheese winky Art Deco. You all probably didn't have as sadistic a design teacher as I did, because if I would have said this is Art Deco in class, I would have been beat to death. Okay. It's sort of like alligator paw deco. But you can see how I'm going to call this hard surface modeling and everyone's going to laugh at me. But, you can take something that is quote unquote hard surface, design a detail, right? And then go to our Chisel Brush, go to Brush, make sure you're here and you snap it. The other really awesome thing about this to remember is that, like alphas, only start, like, there is no over or underhang, but with these, oops, come on, we're going to go below the surface, right? Right, so now those are dug down and under that. And let's put little cheesy radials in it. Ooh, look, it's a radiating. Isn't this exciting? Right? I feel like the guys from the Disney Dragon when he was like, no, really, this is the coolest thing in the world. He's like, he's like, nah, well, you'll get it. So, yeah. Well, and now we go to Brush. Nope, we gotta go to Chisel. Go to Brush. Go to From Mesh. Well, and now once again we come back over to our little pot thing. We go back and ditch our scales. Let's ditch all that crap. Let's go here. Divide. And now We have our radial symmetry and this wacky pattern. But you can see with the negatives, you can come in and sort of fill in some of that space with the cut under. And as you're designing, or as your design comes in, you sort of have more depth in the pattern, right? Because that's cutting down back behind. Now, this is a crap thing to grow, but because those are too thin. But you can see how very quickly and very powerfully you can generate just some absolutely fantastic pattern work, right? And see, it'll even go out over the edge. Once again, these are super thin, but I mean, you're getting the idea. And I think you can see the hard modeling possibilities with that, right? Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, like, you know, if you actually spend your time and, you know, let's say you spent 2 weeks and just made a handful of architectural details that you like, well, you have those for the rest forever, you know, and it's just like making your insert brushes where you have ropes, chains, you know, whatever you use regularly. If you just spend a week or two doing that, well, you can see how this can produce, you know, incredibly interesting and exciting things. Let's go to X, W, cylinder, delete lower, doesn't matter, cylinder, boop. Let's hide that, we'll make that, give it some geometry so it's smooth, we'll go W, schwank, we'll go boop, taper, oops, I didn't save a morph target. Yeah, suck at this game. Store morph target. Taper. Alright. Everybody happy? Okay. Drop that. Come back in. Grab our morph brush. And we drag this back into our ring size. Oh, I don't have, sorry, X and Z, nope, not radial, and we'll drag this back to our morph target. Normally I would have divided that up a little more. Being quick and forgetting steps. Now you're back to your ring size. You start to have an interesting taper. Let's turn this on. Go to Z modeler. Grab here. Just make it a little thicker. Let's knock that back. Knock that back. Knock that back. Bring this forward. There we go. All right. And so now you have this groovy, tapery base ring. We'll divide it. Hide all that crap. Divide a little more. Give me some real geometry. Yeah, that's close, I guess. We go back to our chisel brush. And you can see how now I don't have back face masking on. Sorry. You can see now it's something you can use as design elements and other things. You want to turn back face masking on. All right, fine. I shouldn't be lazy. I should actually do it. I was like, yeah, you get the idea. Here, we'll do it this way. Oh. Right? And so now you can see if you have something, you can use it as design elements and all your other things. And that way you have iteration of line, iteration of theme and design. I know this is super sloppy. I don't want to hear anything from you guys. If I hear it. So now you have a weird acorn and a weird acorn leafy ring. But you can see that if you spent time on your weird little VDMs, the amount of power for iterating, it's mind-numbing, right? I mean, this becomes such an amazing way of getting real sculpted information onto a ring or a pendant or an acorn thing or whatever. And, where are you going to be able to do that fast? And so in the jewelry world where a lot of your race is to generate skews, you have this base ring that you sold last year, and this is the ring that's selling. And now this is a way that you can come in and, okay, so we have that guy, but now let's go back. Well, we'll save the duplicate or whatever. And we come back over here. I really could have just done that by tapping that, but whatever. We come back over here. We're like, okay, that's a little too leafy. Looking for something a little more masculine. But they kind of like the idea. Deformation. Morph the grid. Come over. And now we can do something that is... Where's my floor? Okay, fair enough. No, I'm still using my brush on my brush. That's funny. Not what we were trying to do. Schloop. And so here's another place I would probably use planar flatten line. If I want this to return to 0, we start at 0, we decide where we want it to stop, and then and that kind of comes back to 0. Now, the planar flattens, see, they'll all always go over the ledge because they're dragging your surface up to it. And that's okay, because we just come back with planar and knock it back. Because the planar brush does not, the planar brush does not Now, this is not an even surface, but that's okay. It doesn't, so planar flatten's good because it drags everything up to it. So as we're coming up, let's say you're trying to get a sharp edge, you bring it up and you go over the edge you want it to be on. And it's because it's not flat on the 90. It's sitting like this. That's why it's doing that. So you bring the planar flatten up, and you can see how it's up over that edge, right? And then you grab planar, and you come back and knock it back down. And now that's only going to go, excuse me, it won't fill in. And then let's do something negative. Lower res, smooth that crap out. Higher res, hit it again, higher res, hit it again. And so now we have a surface that will come up and under the other. And then this is a scoop that goes down below the surface. And we'll just scoop that out a little more. And then let's give this a directional texture. Planar that off. We'll give it a little frame. Graphic, right? And once again, this is going below the surface. And this is where people start to have problems when they're working in higher resolutions. As you come back in, and even with Smooth Stronger, you're like, oh, I just can't get any surfaces smooth. They stay so lumpy. I have no. All right, so that's why we use subdivision levels. And we break it down, and we go to a lower subdivision level and smooth. And you can see how we're relaxing that mesh into a really nice, smoother surface. Oops. All right, come back up. Smooth it. Just usually only takes one. Higher res. Smooth. Higher res. Smooth. Clay tubes. Redefine that edge. Right. And so bouncing between those division levels is super important habit. I'll even dynamesh down to ridiculously low numbers so I can subdivide it up and use it. All right, so now we have a more sort of architecturally masculine shape. Arrow, power. And we go back to, oops, make sure it's flat. Go to Chisel. Go to Brush. From Mesh. Boom. Come back to our ring. Turn on back face masking. And now, meh. Okay. I'm like, what the? And so now you can see that you can develop new shapes with the form. We're going to turn Z off. Let's go back. And then, you know, you can sculpt back to that. Turn Z back on. And now you have a completely different look for your piece. Does my smooth have back face mask on? No. And you can see how, you know, I'm sure a lot of people run into this stuff where you get these waves from the brush strokes. It's just noise, and then when you try to smooth it down, once again, just lower your res, knock it off, bring your res higher, knock it off, bring your res higher, knock it off, and your mesh is fine, right? Because some of these brushes are kind of noisy. They leave chatter, and when you start smoothing and chattering and smoothing and chattering, you get a bunch of weirdness. And if you don't have your subdivision levels, there's no way to get back and out of it. But you can see how very quickly you can get iterations off of your same designs. If you're using reoccurring themes, or, you know, let's say it's a logo or it's a shape that you're going to use a lot, you can see how you can really quickly. Why is dynamic on one of these? Yeah. You have to get them all where dynamic's off or on, so when you shift your brushes, they don't change sizes on you. You know, whatever it is. Right? And it's a super fast way of doing it. Okay. So, through all of that, oh, I've been going on for a bit, haven't I? Are there any questions or issues or anything like that? Does anyone want to know anything other than my half-exhausted yabbering? It's another place, like if you have your strong center, delete morph target, store morph target, and then you can really kind of get these wings sort of out and about. And then with your morph brush, you can come back in and make sure that center shape remains consistent, and you can then work your way back to the other stuff. Morph target is just such a badass tool, it's ridiculous. All right. Who did I most enjoy at the summit? That's so hard. You know, there's so many different, you know, it's just always amazing to see like people's workflow, you know, like layers. I've been doing this 11 years and I have never used a layer. And so in turn, like some of the morph target stuff, I think that oh gosh, I can, oh, come on, Tomas, use your head. I'm sorry, guys. I'm tired, and my brain doesn't work so good when I'm tired. The Disney stuff, where he was showing his iterations and morph target stuff um, for resizing an existing ring that's been created. That's exactly where I was going with this. So I talked to Ulfr and Joseph about it because when I was watching him do those iterations, it just struck me in the head that, and I don't, like I said, it's probably going to have to be a script because we don't know where's timeline. It's this thing up here somewhere. Where's timeline? Am I really hallucinating? Is it movie? No. Am I hallucinating? All right, anyone? How do you get your timeline up there? Did I remove it from my fingers? Oh, timeline. Is it load timeline? Nope. See, I don't even know how to get the timeline up. It's under movie. Is it? See, I don't even know how to get the friggin' timeline up. Movie timeline show timeline. Oh, show. Right. Haha. See. So my thinking is if this is a size 6, and then we come out here and we go 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5, 10, 10.5, 11, 11.5, 12, 12.5, 13, and we click here. Right. And I know, how do you set it as a key shot? Like, I've never touched this tool. I just saw him doing it, and I was talking to him about the possibility. Oh, do you drag it out to there and then click on that? No, is it control click? Sorry, guys. Here I'm really proving myself to be a ding dong because I never have opened this tool in my life. Oh my God! Now things are shifted. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I've already blown it. Well, how do I set? How do I make keyframes? I'm sorry that I'm such a dope here. Oh, now it's got more spread out. Oh, for God's sakes. Hold on. Can we clear timeline and try that again? Don't show. Now show. Crap. Alright, so now I've completely torqued this timeline by pushing weird buttons. But, okay, so everyone's like, ah, look at you guys laughing at me. I see how you are. So, all right, fine. So if you do this and start your keyframe there. All right, so, all right, Smurf. I see everyone laughing there. How do you set a keyframe? Which button do you push to set a keyframe? Oh, I have to wait. A lot of laughing. No one's telling me. You click into the keyframe to make a key, but don't you have to? Okay, so we have this. So this is our start, right? And then I come down here and I click here. Do I just click it? And that's a keyframe? Control click. Is it control click? Okay, control click. So now is that a keyframe? Yeah. All right, and so now that's a keyframe, and I go here, and let's take this, and I spend the time to do this correctly, and I now make this a size 12, right? And so now that's that keyframe. Was this keyframe the other one? Yeah, okay. And so now, is that the, Oh no, that's the same thing. That's supposed to be the original size. No, no, no. And somewhere there's a morph target in here. And so I changed the mesh over here to where it's the size 12. This one is the size 6. And then it will do the keyframing between the two sizes. And so I think that that is going to be a very easy way of sizing things. You just have to do 2 iterations of the part at different sizes, and then it'll blend it between them. At least that's what he was doing with his like jaw thicknesses and things like that. And so I obviously have no clue in the world how to use this, and I have yet to even look it up. So, yeah, there's no real positive answer on that one. Excuse me. Let me drink some water and I'll show you in a second. So, I'm supposed to talk to Ulfer and Joseph when things calm down a little in a week or so. So we're going to work that out, and then feasibly we can do it in the other direction where you have the same ring size, but we do it with stones. So we change the stone size and the prongs, and so we'll be able to morph in between them and get, as long as we can figure out what these iterations, these step-by-steps are, then, hopefully, yeah. No, honestly, I wouldn't. About making the ring. It completely depends. Is it going to have stones on it? Is it like my sugar skulls? I literally, between size 6 and probably size 14, it's the exact same ring. I just literally scale it up because it's pretty good. But when you get below a size 6, the detail loses. And above a size 14, it now just weighs 300 pounds. So you have to do things. But let's say, hold on, let's go back here. This is a crap ring. I always love my demos. They're always like, oh, look, it's great. Look, this thing. Okay, so we have this. What I tend to do, Y, go to the center, go to scale, and then hold down Alt and drag, and that opens things up a little, right? And you're not changing this stuff so much. And then I bring my mandrel size in and just reproject to my mandrel. Does that make sense? Do you have a set of my mandrel, like ring size mandrels? Oh, the other thing I found out this weekend is that I really should start yeah, and so you see what I did? We just used Alt when I stretched out, and then I would just reproject the center to the bigger size, and just futz with it. There's really, honestly, if it's not stone sizes and it's just, let's say, a band or something like that, I literally just scale it, because the differences between, let's say, a size 6 and a size, 8 are, less than half a mil, really. So it's really not that dramatic a change when you come down to it. When you're dealing with stones, then yeah, you can't, the prong head has to stay the same size. If you want to show me what you're doing, I'd be happy to, like, do you have my Skype or my email? If you do, just email me or Skype me. Skype is Tomas S. Wittelsbach, and you'll find me, or even just Tomas Wittelsbach. You'll be able to find me on Skype and just Skype me. I sit at my machine all day, so I'd be happy to help you out there. Yeah, the time, like I said, hopefully I just showed you that I am obviously not the individual that's going to make that happen. But I found out this weekend that there's a thing called ArtStation, and I'm supposed to be on it. I had no clue. Never. I don't. Me and social media, I'm an idiot. It's horrible. So it's just one more thing that I'm not going to update. But I was told that I was an idiot if I wasn't on there. So that's something. And then they said that I had to render if I was going to be an ArtStation. So now I have to actually think about getting Keyshot and contemplating rendering it. It just sucks. I don't want to think about all that crap. Yeah, I know. I don't have an ArtStation, and I guess I have to. I actually signed up for, what was the other one? It's another art community, whatever. And I've been on it for 7 years. I guess I posted like 3 pictures. I just so suck. Anybody know an intern who wants to deal with my social media? Oh my God, I so suck at it. Hey, 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 hey. All these people are like so savvy with their stuff. I'm just like, all I do, I just want to sculpt. Um, so do we have any questions? Anybody want to know anything specific to what we've discussed or anything else? Because I guess I've been yabbering on for a while. I always like the lag. I just sit here. No one's listening to me. And then just no one types. Okay, I assume you've heard that. All right. Anything? Anyone? Bueller? Bueller? Wow. I leave here. Everybody else have these beautiful little figures and great crap, and I got this. It's very impressive. Yeah, I can't actually. Have you guys ever heard of Cursed Pirate Girl? Jeremy Goosh? Jeremy. Oh, I can't. Oh, there we go. This guy's brain, he is so rad. I mean, he's like Hieronymus Bosch of pirates, and it's just like all this crazy stuff. He is so rad. I saw his stuff at the Emerald City Comic Con, and I wonder if there's a picture of it here. And it's funny, we both did. I did a crab that has a skull on the back, and then he has this picture here that's like crab skulls, and I was like, dude, you made a crab skull. And we started talking, and he has this crazy knight guy. But I mean, if you look up his work, guys, you want to talk about a dude who's creative. I mean, screw this. Go in and look at all this wacky crap that's going on. I mean, he is absolutely a badass, but I'm going to try to I just had to leave with something that wasn't crap, so I'm going to show you something that's at least kind of sculpted. I'm like, no, I can't leave on this weird mutilated cross Humpty Dumpty looking thing. Okay, no morph brush, fine. Oh, that's not the one here. So he had this knight, and he's standing on a flounder. And I'm going to try to make this as a resin kit for him, or at least print off one so he can make molds or something, because, I mean, what a badass character. He was so cool. I was like, oh, dude, you have to let me sculpt this and send it to you. And so there, at least there's something sculpted. Haha, not some weird ring thing. I'm always so envious because the character guys and stuff, they always wind up with some cute little thing smiling at you. They're like, what do I have? I'm like, all right, we've been here for 6 hours. Here, guys, I hope you learned something. But see, I can't sculpt. I promise. I might not be able to show you guys that, but yeah. He sent me some drawings for the backside. I haven't gotten there yet, but that'd be a pretty good resin kit, don't you think? With a big flounder, it's standing on this big flounder. I think that's one of my favorite parts. But I love it because it's like this bosun's whistle and some weird knob and like a flintlock and your pin screws and he's really impressive. I really like his work. He's a super nice dude. But man, you go through his books. I'll tell you what, man. Go through his books and just look at it. Every little, I mean, it's just like Hieronymus Bosch. He has these weird little fishes and knight helmets. And I mean, it is just wackadoodle. It is so rad. I wish I had the time to just play around and make weird shit. But like his armor construction and stuff is pretty rad. He is really good, well conceived. How he turns armor into these architectural elements and stuff. He's super cool. So, yeah, there. So, oh yeah, without a doubt. And I'll key them, the square keys and stuff. But it's not done. The back's not done yet, and yeah, it needs to be cleaned up. This has been a pretty quick sculpt. These things aren't separated out. I just sculpted it, and so well, I did. That's my base skeleton there. I did use my base skeleton, but for the most part, it's just, it's not broken out into parts. So I have to come back in. But even here, you can see I roll the edges, cutbacks, and that's what I think that a lot of people don't bother looking at me because they're like, well, I don't want to make jewelry. I make, but this stuff, this concept of stepping in and layering, you can see I use it for everything I do. Very little, the time I draw lines, it's really much more about texture. It's not really about, you know, yeah, okay. Well, I'm sure you're all like, okay, great. We're done with you. All right. And one more call out for questions or anything? You could put a chain around it. It could be a pendant. I've seen weirder things on pendants, man. All right. I think, have I done my hours? Oh, we're almost 11. Okay. Yeah, I would say we did okay. Alrighty. Hopefully, oh, so the next time is the 26th? What's the calendar date here? It's really funny. I thought I was going on the 8th, and I got everything set up. I raced home. I got here, on the 2nd, got in, looked up, and I looked on the calendar, and I wasn't scheduled, and I'm like, oh, what did I do wrong? So I'm guessing I think it might be the 26th. Wait, is this October? I guess it's actually on the calendar, isn't it? Okay, it's out there. uh, Thank you, I appreciate it. I will say there were a couple of things that I thought were really spectacular about the summit, and that was a number of the people, and especially the gentleman who sculpted the dragons for Game of Thrones. Sorry, guy. Everyone must hate me because I can't remember my own name, let alone anyone else's. I'm broken that way. But um, wow, what did you do? Okay, but he was saying he and Tony turned around and looked at me. It was like, wait, did you write his talk? Because he said a thing about, he was like, oh, and I really want to, I'm going to show you guys the secret. I'm going to show you the secret button, the sculpt button. And there is no magic sculpt button. It is, you got to get in there and work for friggin' decades. And then you can start to be good. And then the other thing was Richard Thomas, from when he said that he shares his information. He's not, his phone book or his name is still in the phone book, and he expects people to call and ask questions. And I'll tell you what, I think that that's a really important thing, and I really think that's one of the reasons that the ZBrush community is so wonderful, is that from the very beginning, when I came in, I was a sculptor. I wasn't a computer modeler, and you know, everyone there was incredibly helpful and incredibly willing to share information to help make me better. And it's a little tougher now because there's so many people on the forums that like your work doesn't stay up very long. And, like I think it's hysterical that I'm in the Hall of Fame and I have over 500,000 views. But that's because at the very beginning I was one of the only people actually making objects out of ZBrush. And so we had so much conversation and dialogue about it. That's why I have so many views. It's not, I think it's probably the same 8 people asking the questions. But we worked that process out together, and then ZBrush created the tools to help us work those out. And, I just think that it's really important for everyone not to think they have some, super special technique and they're going to keep it from everyone because that's what's going to make them better. And, when the founders of Weta is saying, oh yeah, my, phone number is still in the phone book, it makes me feel good about how I want to share the information. I really want people using this program and making art because it's something that, we don't have. I mean, art is being removed from our society. We're removing it from schools. We're removing it, you know, the art market's ridiculous because now the people who are spending money on art are the people who are buying art as an investment, unless you have proof that you are a commodifiable artist, that your name is going to, in 10 years, double their, investment or whatever. It's hard to get purchased, and that's the nice thing about like the toys and the figures and stuff, that there's a very budding market for that. But like the fine art market's really bizarro right now. And we don't teach art in schools anymore really, and so art has been removed from us. And I think it's really important that we share and share aggressively to get people interested in art. I had it was really one of the most touching things that I've heard in a long time, and it was one of the guys, I think he was from Blizzard, and he said his wife was just there for the show, and she wasn't a ZBrush user, and she heard me talking about jewelry, and she was like, well, I want to do that. I can do that. And I mean, how rad is that? That like we can inspire people to do this stuff. And man, if you can get your nephews and cousins and friends and I mean everyone, the better our world's going to be. I know that sounds dumb and hippie and goofy, but I'll tell you what, man, it just inspires me every time I go to the summit to, we really have an incredibly special community, and only through participation and sharing is it going to remain that way. And I can't reiterate how, the brainchild of one man who really cares about the community. I mean, think about it, guys. We are not a commodified community. We haven't paid for upgrades up to this point. All Ulfra cares about is making this product that makes artists work. And I'll tell you what, as someone who's been part of the community for a long time and, participates, there's nothing like it. And man, do everything you can to spend your time, get better, make good work. And man, I know I sound goofy, but it was really, every time I go to the summit, I'm just like blown away at how you have people who have never opened ZBrush, whose friend made them come, and then you have, you know, heads of major studios, and everyone's just standing out in the parking lot, knees going bad because you've been standing on cement for 15 hours. And I've never had a bad experience. I don't run into people who are, crappy and weird. And I'm sure that everybody has them, let's face it. But for the most part, we have a fantastic community, and it's up to us to make that so. So don't think any of your stuff is special or precious. I guess precious is a better word than special, but share the information you can. And if you're making the person next to you better, at some point they're going to be better than you. And now you're driven to be better than them. And it's just this whole, oh yeah, it's all over. Over is the development. I mean, the he has other people around him who are helping, but this is his brainchild. And I mean, yeah, and he really he is the company. He sets the tenor for the company. And I think because you have one person who actually gives a shit, you have a company that really has that. I mean, I'll tell you what, I've dealt with a lot of companies, and there is no one who cares about their people, and you're their people. And I mean, I'm not getting paid by them or anything like that. I'm just saying I've never felt more indebted to a group of people making a piece of software. It's absolutely silly, but you know, they're changing the world, and that's serious. They really are. They're changing how we think about art, and the fact that it's not Autodesk. They're not out there just if they can't make $1 off you, they don't want to know who you are, and it's not. They're there to help, and every single one of these upgrades comes from us saying, hey, can we get this to do this? I mean, what this program does now compared to what it did 11 years ago is mind-numbing. And I actually came in after it became a sculpting program as opposed to it just being this wingnuttery 2.5D thing, which was, I mean, that's, who thinks of that? That's rad. And now it's so much more, and it's only going to get more powerful. And the more we share and the more we help each other get better, then all of us are better, and it makes the community more strong. And I, yeah, it's just, I can't express how wonderful it is to go to the summit, hang out with these people, and they're my family. It's great. And it's like people I've known for years. And when I first doing this, it's just, yeah, participate. Participate as much and as hard as you can, and work. It's just so nice to hear people go, yeah, you got to work hours, man hours, man hours. And I know I said this before, but it was so funny talking about, I've been consolidating my drives, and I have well over 4,000 quick saves. And now my quick saves are in a half hour, but at the earlier, it was every 20 minutes. I didn't know you could change it for a while there. But even at 20 minutes, 4,000 quick saves is 26,000 hours. Over the last 5 years, I have 26,000 hours of active working, because quick save doesn't save if you're not working. So, and that's just retarded. I have some real issues. So, it's like, it's just work, and a great group of people. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Yeah. I know I sound like a goofy rant, but someone asked me what I liked about the show. So, that's why I really like and participate in this, because, I'm a goofus. I'm crap at at Facebook and all that, and I'm not very good at getting myself out there anymore. And to be deadly honest, you notice I don't stream for myself. It's not something that, and I should do a lot of this, and I'm working on it. But when they asked me to do it, I was like, hell yeah, I'll do it right now. Let's do it. And so it says something about how powerfully I feel about these people. I think It is absolutely the best group of people out there. It is not a corporate culture. It is a handful of people who give a shit if you're a good artist and can they give you tools that make you better, you know. So participate. Any other questions before we wrap this thing up? I see myself in time lag. Great. We have 89 people and they're all just sitting here staring at me, staring at the computer. Okay, so I have to wait for the next time lag. We're going to put it out there one more time. Any other questions before we wrap up tonight? My rant. I'm always ranting. My class, I can't believe my class even deals with me. I'm just always like this rant. I'm like, work. Get your head out of your butt and do something. Okay. Um, well, there it is. I completely failed in my timeline demonstration. Thank goodness no one expects me to know what that is because that was the first time I opened it. But I had a good idea about it. All right, guys. So I will see you whenever they have me scheduled next. It's a little weird because I'm out of town for 2 weeks in the middle of the week, and then I'm back down in Laguna for Ryan Kingsley's like live event that's tied to my class, and that's the last weekend of October. It's a live event. I mean, you can contact Ryan if you all want to show up to that. If anyone's in the LA area, it's fun. We have a lot of time or a lot of fun. Okay, guys and gals, not being gendered. Hey, no problem. Yeah. Okay. Mm, how do I turn this off? I was, I was, I was reiterated repeatedly that I had to not leave my stream running because they were worried about what would come out of my mouth after the class. All right. Have a great night, guys. We'll talk soon.